Women were warned to lock their doors and look out for each other.
She was beaten beyond recognition and strangled with a metal cord tightened around her throat.
Our city.
The women were all strangled and sexually assaulted.
A hunting ground.
At least a few who work the kill zone believe they have encountered the killer.
More than 130 women strangled or asphyxiated over 4 decades.
Homicide detectives searched through the thick brush of a southwest Atlanta lot looking for clues in the death of an unidentified woman.
100 cases reported unsolved.
Was she killed here or did someone dump her body here?
Now we are hunting the killers through time and across the continent. But our investigation starts here, the Atlanta Public Library. The killers have been hiding out in these drawers for years. Microfilm snapshots of murder. Reporters saw the connections back then. And now, 2 decades later, I'm searching for historic killers. Some of them caught and convicted, but most got away with murder. Could Atlanta really have more than 100 separate stranglers? We're flying to the nation's capital, not to the FBI, but to a suburban home in Northern Virginia, where victims of Atlanta's unsolved murders now live only as zeros and ones on a computer hard drive.
We're showing exactly 100 unsolved murders of women who were strangled. That is astonishing. You just don't see that anywhere else in America.
Tom Hargrove started the nonprofit Murder Accountability Project, the most complete homicide database in the nation.
We've assembled records now on 751,000 murders in the United States. What the algorithm does is try to group those into meaningful clusters of murders.
The biggest cluster in the nation? Atlanta's strangulation murders.
By far the largest series in modern history. The odds of this being 133 individual killers, I would bet my house that no, there are multiple serial killers at work, and they were very successful.
The latest dead prostitute was found inside the Eastlake Elementary School.
9 Atlanta prostitutes were murdered in the mid-90s, and the city was looking for a serial strangler. But at least 5 individual killers were eventually caught.
Did you kill him, Brian?
Yet the killings continued.
Her body found this morning in the 500 block of Fair Street.
And multiple cases remain unsolved.
It's almost as if you had a convention of serial killers who were stranglers, and you had them in Atlanta over many, many years.
What makes this look like a serial killer or serial killers and not just a series of random events perpetrated by, multiple individuals?
What is breathtaking is how these murders are quite different from what happens in most of America. About 80% of murders of women are solved. Someone is arrested. That's because most women are killed by intimates, a boyfriend or a husband. Most of the time, we get the guy who kills women. In this particular cluster, that hardly ever happened.
While they're tracking the killings in Virginia, who is tracking the killers? To answer that question, we're back in the air, headed to Canada, where a team of cold case researchers is hunting Atlanta's previously unknown serial killers.
The first victim in the series of killings, she was found dead March 1st in her apartment. She had been sexually assaulted and smothered with a pillow.
Western University, Ontario, Canada.
That's a huge break, that someone can identify this guy.
The Cold Case Society, led by criminology professor Michael Arntfield.
Through the cooperation of the Atlanta PD, 44 names that now we can begin doing victim workups on.
And student volunteers, young Canadians trying to solve Atlanta's old murders.
We suspect that 1 or 2 serial killers were probably behind that cluster specifically.
Murders that happened before they were born, and they approach the data in a much different way than a conventional detective would. And I call it the Uber of homicide investigation. It's disruptively innovative.
2 weeks of heavy publicity preceded the trial date, during which time 2 of the Atlanta slayings occurred.
The team is perplexed by the strangulation murders of more than a dozen elderly women over a 30-year period.
Since at least 1988, a serial killer has stalked the elderly women of Vine City.
Like the prostitute murders, there were arrests, but the killing continued off and on for decades.
The next day, the 3rd woman was slain in Atlanta.
30 years is almost unheard of.
So what you're saying is we have multiple serial killers.
We have multiples
Yeah, look.
within just the subset of the elderly victims.
This is not a small group. We're talking about either one very prolific, perhaps the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history.
The most prolific serial strangler in American history, or multiple offenders operating in the same city with the same MO at the same time, all undetected.
Our city, home to an unknown number of unidentified killers.
With a serial killer in the neighborhood, it may be time to get a gun.
Why do we feel pretty confident that you have multiple serial killers in Atlanta? Because of mathematics. Strangulation is relatively rare. It is not rare in Atlanta.
The public is fascinated with Jeffrey Dahmer and the Zodiac and the Son of Sam. The most important killers are the ones we don't even know about yet.